Hello friends and welcome back to the course. In this section, we will discuss conditional statements in Java. We briefly looked at control flow and if statement in our second Java program chapter earlier in this course. Now is the time to understand the conditional statements of Java in depth. To recap, the order in which the statements of a program are executed is known as control flow. By default, the statements of our program are executed from top to bottom in order in which they are written. To solve any real-world problem through your program, you will need to alter the control flow. Programming languages provide statements to alter the control flow of the program, and these statements are known as control statements. In Java, control statements can be categorized in three categories: selection, iteration, and jump. We use selection statements to choose different paths of execution based upon the outcome of an expression or the state of a variable. We use iteration statements to execute a set of statements repeatedly until some end condition is met. Jump statements are used to transfer program control to specific points in the program. Let's look at each one of them in detail, starting with the selection statements. Java provides two selection statements, if and switch. We will first look at the if statement followed by the switch statement. In our daily lives, most of the decisions we make depend upon some factors. If it is cold, we wear a jacket. If it is raining and we must step outside, we wear a raincoat or we take an umbrella. If our mobile phone's battery is low, we put it on charging. If we are hungry, we eat food. Java's if statement helps us to do the same things in our program. That is, if statement helps to execute a set of statements based on certain conditions. In its most simple form, if statement is written like this. The if statement will test the condition. If condition is true, then statement is executed. If condition is false, then statement is bypassed. Recall from our code blocks and tokens discussion that a code block containing multiple statements can replace the statement after if like this. The condition in if statement should be an expression that evaluates to a Boolean value. We can also use a Boolean variable as condition of if statement. We will see an example of this soon. Many times, we want to do one set of things if some condition is true and a different set of things if that condition is false. Building on our previous example, if it is raining, I will go to my office by car. Otherwise, I will go by bike. If it is a holiday, you will not go to school. Otherwise, you will go to school. If statement provides an optional else clause to do such decision making in our programs. Its syntax is this. If condition evaluates to true, statement A is executed. If condition is false, statement B is executed. The if-else construct ensures that depending on the condition, either statement A or statement B will be executed. Remember that in no case will both statements be executed. Like if statement, here also we can replace statement A and statement B with code blocks containing multiple statements. Enough theory, it is time to look at a few BlueJ programs to see if-else statement in action. This first program takes three numbers as input from the user and prints the largest of the three numbers. This program demonstrates the simple use of if statement without any else clause. Let's go through the program to understand it. Here, we accept three numbers from the user as input using the scanner class and store them in int variables a, b, and c respectively. Now, we need to find the greatest of these three numbers. How to do that? I have declared this variable max here to hold the value of the greatest number. I will start by assuming that the first number is the greatest number. So I am assigning the value of first number a to max. After that, I will check if the second number is greater than my greatest number. If it is, then second number will become my greatest number. So in the first if statement, I am checking if the value of b is greater than the value of max. If it is, then I am assigning the value of b to max, as b is the greatest number now. If b is not greater than max, then max will keep the value of a which we assigned to it previously. At this point, we have found the greater of the two numbers between a and b. Next, I will check if the third number is greater than my greatest number. To do that, in the next if statement, I am checking if c is greater than max. If it is, then I am assigning the value of c to max. If it is not, then max keeps its value. After the second if check, max has the value of the greatest of the three numbers which I am printing with the help of println method. Let's execute this program. It is asking me to enter the first number. I will enter 88. I am giving 150 and 37 as the second and third number. It is correctly printing 150 as the greatest of 88, 150 and 37. Next program shows the use of if-else statement, so let's head to it. This is a very simple program which accepts a number from the user and prints whether the number is even or odd. First, we ask the user to input the number that we will be checking for even or odd. Next, we check if the number is divisible by 2 with the help of the modulus operator. If dividing the number by 2 doesn't leave any remainder, then number is even, otherwise it is odd. Let's execute the program and test it with some inputs. Our program correctly identifies even and odd numbers. So far, in our if-else program, we have been using expressions which evaluate to a Boolean value as the condition of our if statements. In the greatest number program, we used b greater than max and c greater than max as conditions of the if statement. In odd-even program, we used number modulus 2. As I mentioned before, we can also use a Boolean variable as the condition of the if statement. This simple program will demonstrate it. I have a Boolean variable is raining which I have initialized to true. In the if check, I am directly using the variable is raining. If is raining is true, I am printing I will go to office in car. If it is false, I am printing I will go to office on bike. Let me execute it. As I have set is raining to true, I will go to office in car is getting printed on the screen. Let me change is raining to false and execute it. Now I get I will go to office on bike as the output. So we can use a Boolean variable directly as the condition of an if statement. I can write the if statement like this as well. Both ways are equivalent. Let me execute it and show you that I will get the same output as before. Here, this usage of equality operator to check for true is redundant, as is raining is a Boolean variable itself and can be used directly as the condition of if statement. Before we wrap up this video, I want to show you a very important thing about if-else statements and code blocks. This is a very simple guess my favorite letter program. I have chosen K as my favorite letter. I ask the user to input their guess for what my favorite letter is. I check if the user has entered K. I check for both upper and lowercase k as I want my program to be case insensitive. Depending on whether or not the user has guessed correctly, I print an appropriate message for the user. Take a moment, pause the video, go through the program and see if you can spot any error in it. Were you able to figure out what's wrong? Let's see if you have identified the error correctly. Let's execute the program. Let's make an incorrect guess first. I will enter C as my guess. Nothing wrong there, the output looks fine. Let me clear the console window, execute the program again, and this time I will enter the correct guess K. Now, do you see the error? Along with the message for correct guess, the program is also printing the second line of incorrect message output. So, what went wrong? Let's go back to the program and check. Remember, only one statement can appear directly after the if or the else. If you want to include more than one statements, you must create a code block by enclosing the statements within a set of curly braces. Looking at the indentation level of this line, it is clear that I want to execute both statements inside the else clause of the if statement. But if you remember our discussion about white space in Java, compiler ignores all the white space. It only cares about the tokens in the program. So this code compiles and executes but behaves incorrectly. To make both these statements execute inside the else clause, I need to enclose them within a pair of curly braces like this. Now our program should behave correctly. Let's check. It is behaving correctly. Forgetting to define a code block when one is needed is a common cause of errors. So, be watchful for your statements after the if and else clause and don't let this error happen to you. Now, we will use the concepts of if-else statements we have learned so far and try to solve a few programming problems. I want to start with explaining the methods to extract the digits of a number. Every year in your board exam, one programming question comes where you need to extract the digits of the number to solve the problem. I will suggest you understand and practice it thoroughly. Extracting digits of a number is very simple. When you divide a number by 10, the remainder is the digit in the units place. You got your digit. Now, if you perform integer division on the number by 10, it will truncate the number by removing the digit you just extracted. You need to repeat these two steps till the number becomes 0 to extract all the digits of the number. Let's apply these steps on 357 and see if we can extract 3, 5 and 7 from it. Start by dividing 357 by 10. We get the remainder as 7. This gives us the first digit of the number. The quotient is 35. This quotient is the result of integer division of 357 by 10. So, our truncated number after extracting the first digit is 35. Next, we repeat the steps with 35 as our new number. Dividing 35 with 10 gives 5 as the remainder. This gives us the second digit of the number. Our new truncated number is the quotient of this step, that is 3. We again repeat our steps with 3 as our new number. We get the third digit of the number as 3. The quotient is 0, which means that we have extracted all the digits of the number. So, by the end of this step, we have all the 3 digits 7, 5 and 3 of the number 357 with us. It is that simple to extract the digits of a number and secure one question of 15 marks in section B of your board examination paper. Now, let's translate these steps into Java code. I have coded all the steps of digit extraction that we discussed just now in this extract digits method of kboard digit extraction class. Let's go over the extract digits method. We first ask the user to input a 3-digit number. We take the input from the user with the help of scanner class and store it in this int variable number. We then make a copy of number into numCopy. This step of making a copy of the number is essential because we will truncate the number for extracting its digits, and we don't want to lose the original input given by the user. This is the first step of the process. Modulus operator returns the remainder of numCopy divided by 10. This gives us the first digit of the number which we store in int variable digit 1. In the second step, we use the shorthand division operator to divide numCopy by 10 and store the result in numCopy. Notice both the variable numCopy and the literal 10 are of integer type, so integer division is performed. This truncates the number by removing the digit in the units place. We repeat these steps to extract the second and third digit of the number. At step 6 here, value of numCopy should become 0 for a 3-digit number. We will confirm this by looking at the output of this next println statement when we will execute the program. After that, in the next println statement, we print the 3 digits of the number that we extracted. Let's execute the program and give 357 as the input. Notice at step 6, after extracting 3 digits, numCopy has become 0. This confirms that the input number had 3 digits. Let me clear the output and execute the program again. This time I will give a 4-digit number 4625 as the input. Notice in the output that our program correctly extracts 3 digits of the number, but value of numCopy is 4 and not 0 at step 6. We can check the value of numCopy at the corresponding extraction step to validate that user is entering a value with the same number of digits we asked for. If we asked for a 3-digit number and user entered a 1-digit number, we can flag that as invalid input. We will validate user input for the correct number of digits in the next set of programs that we will write. In this lesson, we will look at a Java program which checks if a number is a buzz number or not. A number is a buzz number if it ends with 7 or is divisible by 7. 63 is a buzz number as it is divisible by 7. 747 is also a buzz number as it ends with 7. 83 is not a buzz number as it is neither divisible by 7 nor it ends in 7. Let's go to the program now. This is our buzz number program. Here we take the number to be checked as input from the user with the help of a scanner class and store it in int variable number. Next, our if condition checks if the number is a buzz number or not. First part of the if condition checks if last digit of the number is 7. We discussed this in extracting digits example that when we divide any number by 10, the remainder is the digit in units place. We check if it is equal to 7. In the next part, we check if the number is divisible by 7. Both checks are joined together with logical OR operator, so if any one of them is true, we print that the number is a buzz number, otherwise it is not. Fairly simple and straightforward, isn't it? Before wrapping up the video, let me run the program and show you the output. First, I'll compile the class. Then I'll create an object of this class. After that, I'll use this object to execute the buzzNumberTest method. I will give 63 as the first number. Our program identifies it as a buzz number. Let me execute the program again. Next, I will give 747 as the next input. Okay, that's also a buzz number. Last, I am giving 83 as the input, and that's not a buzz number. So, Our program is working as expected and we can happily conclude this lesson. In this lesson, we will look at a Java program which checks if a two-digit number is a special number or not. This question came in 2014 board exam. Here is the question as it came in the exam. A special two-digit number is such that when the sum of its digits is added to the product of its digits, the result is equal to the original two-digit number. Taking 59 as example, the sum of its digits is 14 and the product of its digits is 45. When we add the sum and product of its digits, the result is 59, which is equal to the original number. So 59 is a special number. We need to write a program which will take a two-digit number as input and tell us if it is a special number or not. To check if a number is a special number or not, we will first extract the digits of the number. Next, we will compute the sum of the digits. After that, we will compute the product of the digits. Then we will add the sum and product of the digits together and check if it is equal to the original number. Here is our special number program. We first accept the number from the user with the help of scanner class and store it in original number int variable. As we will truncate the number, it is good to make a copy of it to preserve the original input. We will need the original number later in the program. In this part of the program, we extract the two digits of the number and store them in digit 1 and digit 2 int variables. Notice these two if checks. They validate that the number entered by the user is a two-digit number. Let's look at the first if check. If after extracting the first digit, the number becomes 0, it means that the number user entered was a single-digit number. This line system.exit0 is a new thing here that we haven't talked about so far. Exit is a function of system class. It is used to terminate the execution of the program. We often come across scenarios like these where it is not possible to continue with the execution of the program. In such situations, we make use of system.exit function to terminate the program. A call to system.exit function will terminate the JVM which is executing our program. We pass 0 as the argument to system.exit to indicate the normal termination. Any non-zero argument indicates abnormal termination. Moving on to the next if check, if after extracting two digits the number doesn't become 0, it means that the number entered by the user has more than two digits. Here again, we are terminating the program using system.exit. Okay, moving on. After extracting the digits, the logic is straightforward. In fact, the question itself describes the solution in detail, providing step-by-step instructions. You can't ask for an easier examination question than this. We compute the sum and product of the digits, add them together and check if it is equal to the original number and display an appropriate message to the user. So, if you know how to extract the digits of a number, the question itself provides the rest of the solution. Such questions are easy scoring opportunities for you. With a little preparation, you can score full marks in such questions. Let's quickly execute the program and try out a few inputs. I'll give 59 as the first input. Our program correctly identifies it as a special number. Next, I'll give 87. 87 is not a special two-digit number. The last input that I'll give is 29. Good, we found a new special number 29. With that, we will wrap up this lesson. We can write an if-else statement within another if-else statement. We call this nested if. Let's look at an example of nested if. In our nested if-else example program, we will ask the user to enter his or her age. Our program should tell the user if he is an adult or not. If the user is not an adult, our program should tell the user if he is a minor or teenager. If the user is an adult, our program should tell the user if he is a senior citizen. The age categories are defined in this table. This is the sample output of our program for different ages. For age between 0 to 12, it should tell the user that he is not an adult and he is a minor like this. For age between 13 to 17, it should tell the user that he is not an adult and he is a teenager like this. For age between 18 to 59, it should tell the user that he is an adult. For age 60 and above, it should tell the user that he is an adult and a senior citizen like this. With this much context set, let's look at the program now. Our program makes use of nested if-else statements. In the outer if-else, we check if the user is an adult or not and display an appropriate message. If the user is not an adult, program control will enter this if part of the if-else statement, and the inner if-else will check if the user is a minor or teenager. If the user is an adult, program control will go to the else part of the if-else statement. This inner if-else will check if the user is a senior citizen or not. This is how we can use nested if-else statements to do conditional checks at multiple levels. Let's try out a few ages as inputs and see which branch our program takes. I will quickly compile and execute the program. I will give 15 as the first input. Let's bring back the code and correlate the output that we got. As 15 is less than 18, condition of the outer if check becomes true. Program control enters the if part and this println statement is executed, giving us the first line of our output. After that, program control comes to this if check. As 15 is greater than 13, the condition becomes false and program control enters the else part. This println statement is executed, giving us the second line of our output. As condition of outer if check was true, this else part is skipped. Program control reaches the end of the method and execution of the program completes. I will give a few more ages as inputs. Try to trace out the execution of the program on your own for these inputs and correlate the output with the code. It will help you to strengthen your understanding of nested if-else. At this point, I want to tell you an important thing about nested ifs. When you use nested ifs, remember that an else statement always refers to the nearest if statement that is within the same code block as the else and that is not already associated with an else. In this nested if-else, this else is associated with this if, as it is the nearest if within the same code block not already associated with an else. This else is associated with this if. It is not associated with this if because it is not in the same code block even though it is the nearest if without an else. I will quickly execute the program. Let's correlate the output with the code. As a is 5, condition of this if check becomes false. Program control comes to the statements in the else part associated with this if, which is here. B is 4, so this if check becomes false and the statement following it is not executed. Program control moves to this if check. As value of C is 40, this if check becomes false. Program control moves to the else part and comes here. This statement assigns the value of x to y, so value of y changes from 30 to 20. Next, program control comes to this println statement, which prints the values of w, x, y and z to the console. As you can see in the output, w, x and z have their initial values of 10, 20 and 40 respectively. Y has the same value as x, that is 20. With this, the execution of our program completes. The if and if-else constructs we have seen so far allow us to test a single condition and execute one set of steps if it is true and another set of steps if it is false. But often there are situations where we need to test multiple conditions. Take the example of your school day. If it is maths class, you will study maths. If it is physics class, you will study physics. If it is recess time, you will take a break, talk to your friends while having your tiffin. If it is games time, then you will go out and play games and so on. In such scenarios, you must test multiple conditions and then take a decision. The programming construct in Java which helps us with such decision making is the if-else-if ladder. Its syntax is this. The if statements are executed from top down. As soon as one of the conditions controlling the if is true, the statement associated with that if is executed and rest of the ladder is bypassed. If none of the conditions is true, then the final else statement will be executed. The final else acts as a default condition, as in, if all other conditional tests fail, then the last else statement is performed. If you don't write a final else and all other conditions are false, then none of the statements from the if-else-if ladder will get executed. Let's try writing a program using if-else-if ladder. Our program will ask the user to enter her marks. It will then output the grade obtained by the user based on her marks as per this table. This is our program and here is our if-else-if ladder. In the if-else-if ladder, our program will first check if the marks are less than 35. If this condition is false, the program control will move to the next condition and check if marks are less than 60. If this condition is also false, the program control will move to the next condition and check if marks are less than 80. If this condition is also false, the program control will move to the next condition and check if marks are less than 95. If this condition is also false, the program control will enter the else part and execute this println statement to print A+ grade on the screen. At any point in stepping through the if-else-if ladder, if any of the condition tests out to be true, the corresponding println statement will get executed and the rest of the ladder will be skipped. Program control will move to this statement after the if-else-if ladder. Let's execute the program and try giving it a few marks as input. First, I'll give 34. Next, I'll give 58. This time, I'll give 94. As the last input, let me give a A+ grade 98. Our program correctly tells the grade for each input. This completes our discussion of if statement. Next, we will look at the switch statement. We talked about testing multiple conditions for making a decision while discussing if-else-if ladder. Java provides another control statement, the switch statement, for such multi-way branch. It follows this syntax. Let's look at a simple example of switch statement and relate it with the syntax. This is the expression of the switch statement that we saw in the syntax. It must resolve to byte short int char string or an enum. In this example, it is of type int as the data type of variable number is int. The values specified in the case statements must be unique constant expressions of the same type as the expression in the switch statement. This point that I just mentioned about values of case statements has three important things in it. You must understand and remember them. First is that these case values should be unique. You cannot have duplicate case values within a single switch statement like this. It will cause an error. Second is that case values should be constant expressions. What this means is the case values can be literals of the same type as the expressions in the switch statement. Here, the case values are integer literals 0, 1, 2. They can also be constants declared using the final keyword of the same type as the expression in the switch statement. So, I can also write the case statements like this. This will compile without errors as keyword final is making 0, 1, 2 as constants. But they cannot be expressions involving variables like this. Since I have removed the keyword final, 0, 1, 2 are now variables. There is no guarantee that their values will not change. Values of case statements must be constant expressions. Giving variables as values of case statements results in error. Let me revert the program to its original state. Okay, coming to the third point, type of each value must be compatible with the type of expression in the switch statement. Here, number is of type int and each of the values 0, 1, 2 are integer literals, so the compiler is happy and everything works fine. If I change number to string type like this, I will start getting errors for incompatible types. Let me revert this change. Now we have some understanding of the syntax of switch statement. Next, let's try to understand how it works. The switch statement takes the value of the expression and tests it for equality against each of the values specified in the case statements. If it founds a match, then the statements following the case statements are executed. If none of the case values match the value of the expression, then the statements in the default case are executed. However, the default case is optional. If no cases match and no default is present, then none of the statements from switch are executed. These break statements in each of the cases will transfer the program control outside the closing curly braces of the switch statement code block over here. Break statements belong to the jump category of Java's control statements. They play a very important role in switch statements and loops. We will look at their usage in switch statements in depth just after executing this program. Their usage in loops will be examined in the iteration statements section. Let me run the program. As the value of number is 1, this case statement should get executed. I will create an object of this class and execute demo switch statement. As expected, case with value 1 gets executed. Let me open the class and introduce a for statement here to execute all cases like this. This for loop will test the switch statement with numbers between 0 to 4. Let's run the program now. As you can see in the output, when value of number is 0, 1 and 2, cases 0, 1 and 2 are executed. For values of number greater than 2, that is 3 and 4, default case gets executed. I hope you have a good understanding of switch statement by now. Next, we will look at the usage of break statements in switch. The break statement is optional. If you don't write the break statement at the end of your case statement, execution of the program will continue into the next case and then to the case after that and so on until a break statement is encountered or the end of the switch statement is reached. In programming terms, we refer to this as program control falling through the cases of switch statement. To understand this fall through thing, let's go back to our last example of switch statement and remove all the break statements from cases and see what happens. I am removing all the break statements. Now I will run the program. What is this output we got this time? Let's try to understand it. Value of number is 1, so this case is matched and the println following it gets executed. We see value of number is 1 printed in the output here. As we have removed the break statement from this case, program control falls through to the next case. This println gets executed and we see the output value of number is 2 in the console window. As there are no break statements in our switch, the fall through of program control continues to the default case and we see the output value of number is greater than 2 on the console. So that's fall through in switch statement for you. Let's write a break in case 2 and run the program. This time case 1 gets executed, then program control falls through to case 2. Println of case 2 gets executed, but since case 2 now has a break statement, it transfers the program control to the end of switch statement over here, and the println of default case is not printed. By now you may wonder why switch statement behaves this way and is there any use of this fall through behavior? Turns out this fall through behavior of switch is very useful in programming. Let me prove it to you with an example. This program takes the month of the year as the input and prints the season corresponding to that month as the output. It decides the season based on this table. February, March is spring, April, May, June is summer, July, August, September is monsoon, October, November is autumn, December, January is winter. Notice that multiple months map to the same season. In such situations, we can use fall through behavior of the switch statement. Here, we have clubbed together the cases of months mapping to the same season and provided a single break statement. Let's say I give the month number as 4. It will match this case. Since there is no break, the program control will fall through case 5 and 6 and print its summer season to the console. The break statement after the println statement will transfer the program control outside of the switch statement over here. Using the fall through behavior of switch statement, I can make this program concise by not repeating the same println statement in the case of each month that maps to the same season. I will show the execution of the program now with a few different months as input. First I'll compile the class. Then I'll create a new object of the class. Using this object, I will execute the print season method. Okay, so it's asking me to enter the month. I'll give the first input as February. It correctly shows spring as the season for February. Next, I will give May. Summer for May is correct. Next, let me give July. July is indeed monsoon. Next, I will give November. And it is autumn season in November. Next, I'll give December. Winter for December is correct. So, as you can see, our program is behaving as expected. Let me also try giving an invalid month. So, I'll give the month as 25. Our program is able to handle an invalid month too. You can use switch statement as the target of case to create nested switch statements. Here is an example of nested switch. The target of case 0 is another switch statement. Notice that the case constants in this inner switch and the outer switch are the same. This is valid. The program compiles fine without issues. Switch statement defines its own block marked by these pair of opening and closing curly braces. Because of this, no conflict arises between the case constants in the inner switch and those in the outer switch. Let's execute this program and examine the output. As I is 0 and j is 1, case 0 of outer switch followed by case 1 of inner switch gets executed, and we get the output I is 0, j is 1 on the console window. We will complete our discussion of switch statements by looking at how it differs from if statement. Switch can only test if the expression is equal to any of its case constants, whereas if can test for any Boolean expression like less than, greater than, not equal to, and so on. The second point of difference is that switch statement tests the same expression against a set of constant values, whereas if-else-if ladder construct can use different expressions involving unrelated variables. Next, the expression of switch statement must only evaluate to byte, short, int, char, string or an enum. So, we cannot test long and floating point expressions using switch. If statement doesn't have such limitations. This last point will make up for all the limitations of switch we discussed in the above points. It is about performance. If you need to select from a very large group of values, a switch statement will run much faster than the equivalent program written using the if-else-if ladder. By putting all these constraints on switch, the compiler performs some very cool optimizations, making it faster than if-else. Now, compiler optimization is an advanced topic, so I will leave it at this only for this course.